Hello and welcome to the Hero Spouse. I'm Kendra Ruth and I'm going to answer one of your questions about marriage and midlife crisis. Today we have Frank. Frank is a left behind spouse whose bomb drop was March of 2020. His date of marriage is 2001. He has a clinging boomerang and a high energy replayer. And Frank is referencing the email I sent to the group in the past few days where I was referencing emotional blackmail and how Chuck was being emotionally blackmailed. And he says, your story about Chuck being emotionally blackmailed makes a lot of sense to me. I see it happening with my wife as well. I see it happening with your wife as well too, Frank. I see a lot of similarities in our situations. She doesn't see it, or won't, maybe. You mentioned her being disempowered and too sensitive. That's exactly right. I read somewhere that antidepressants could be helpful here. Do you agree, or do you think this would be like interfering in the natural process of a midlife crisis and potentially could backfire? Well, I would get myself in so much trouble if I said, no, don't do antidepressants. That's a medical question. And what I would do with the question is I would approach somebody who is an experienced clinician. In other words, a therapeutic clinician, somebody who, and ask them what they feel about medical and pharmaceutical and therapy. Oftentimes what's considered the best for these things is when you use pharmaceuticals and talk therapy in conjunction with each other. I understand this concern is interfering with natural process of MLC. Sometimes you don't know it's going to interfere or not. Let's say it did, but let's say if you took this, let's just throw out a milligram amount. If you took 25 milligrams, it would be interfering. But if you took 10 milligrams or whatever substance, it would be enough, that hope floats kind of thing, to lift you just enough. So there is such a, thing is something that could go overboard. And it might depend on the person. One person, it would be helpful for, and the next person, it might not respond that way. I don't think you should avoid pharmaceuticals because of that. I think that we need to experiment with everything we can. That's just my opinion on it. And I'm saying that as somebody who can't stand the idea of having to take pharmaceuticals when I wish we could be facing our fears and facing an insight and all of these things. Chuck's on medication for his anxiety, and thank God he is. I am blessed. That is a blessing every day, and he just got a new one that I'm hoping will be even more helpful. And if it were me, I would personally try other things because I know my own history, and I know my levels of resilience as well. And so I would start out with, okay, I'm going to do some hypnotherapy and some meditation, but I know Chuck wouldn't do those things. And so some people, he wants a pill that's a miracle pill. Some people do. And sometimes that's the only thing that works anyway. So I wouldn't give up on pharmaceuticals just because you're afraid of interfering with their learning. That the lessons that come from depression, do we then block them? It's something to think about, but I think we send ourselves into paralysis when we think too much on that, because then we avoid getting the small bits of help even that we could. Okay? I hope this was helpful, and I'll see you all.